What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players Podcast. We're closing in on 200 episodes as we enter 192. We are continuing with the trend of reacting to our preseason predictions and draft things are kind of on the menu for today. So, for those of you who've been around long enough, you remember that our part of our preseason routine is previews of teams, predicting standings, predicting awards winners, and then picking or drafting the top players in each position we think are going to be there for the year. And we're going to look back on that. There are definitely some shocking ones, but we drafted based off of stats from the year before. And I think next year we have to go with players just all over the place because we definitely missed out on a couple that should have been there. And you'll go through that, or you'll see that as we go through. But what we'll do here is basically go through we have goalkeepers, right back, center back, left back, sixes, tens, left mid, right mid, striker. We have 5 in each of those categories. We're going to go through who we picked, why we picked some players that we picked, and then the kind of talk about the way I did it, and Connor will jump in here in a second and maybe correct me if I need to be, is I went into the MLS fantasy points and just took their total fantasy points for the year, averaged them together, and that was a score for that group. And the reason I did that is because sometimes you drafted let's say a right back, and they ended up playing center back most of the year. So when you look them up on who scored or something like that, their average rating doesn't really match. So I went the fantasy point route, but I'll bring Connor in and he can tell me how he did his.
I did both. I did fantasy points and I did the rating route. I
Nerd.
tried to set like a minimum number of appearances so that it's not like a situation where maybe like trying to think of something. Let me pick a Benny ball player because that would make the most sense. Pamine Posse. Like let's say Pamine Posse played as like I'm making this up. I don't think he did, but if he played as a 6 for one game, he shouldn't like be counted in the rankings of sixes. So there's a cutoff of usually it's like 10 appearances, I believe, at that position. And I used that to get the who scored rating and then where they ranked.
Okay. So I tried doing that. And like I mentioned, I just didn't quite know what would happen. Like, for example, one of my players got hurt like in preseason after we drafted. So I didn't know how to factor that into an average if he didn't play. So that's why I went the fantasy point route. And I will tell you, it was very, very close on the way that I looked at it.
I believe that.
So, um, before we do any of that, of course, we do have a certain segment we need to go through, and I will send it over to you to figure out what you got going first.
All right. I busted out the Columbus scarf
Boring.
in honor of a certain player that I drafted in a certain position that I absolutely knocked out of the park. But I'm not going to spoil anything, so you'll have to listen through.
I feel like I took that player, unless it's a different player. Oh, it is a different player. Never mind.
It is a different
um,
player.
I'm showing off the last of my new scarf collection that just came in. Is it too close? Yeah, it might be. The
Can't hear.
Vancouver
There you go.
86ers, baby. I've gotten onto this trend of picking up a whole bunch of scarves from early pre, MLS 1.0 and before days. And this is the last of the group that I've brought in. They're all the thing I'm a little bit unhappy about is they're all the same design with just different colors. So it's the black and red like zigzag stripes, and then the logo in the middle with the logo stitched on the underside. So they all kind of look the same, but again, just to say, you know, I've taken this and worked with it. I'm happy with it. So, um, you want to just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ooh, hold on a second. I'm missing a number. That
Uh oh.
might, oh, it
He's
might send me
cheating.
over the edge.
He's cheating.
Anyways, while we do this, let's start with the goalkeepers. So, um, I guess the best way to do this is I'll read through the players that we each drafted and highlight kind of the big hitter and the lowest hitter, I guess. How do you think we should do this? Maybe you can tell me. You've got an idea.
Uh, yeah, why not? You can go. You could read through who we picked, and then you could mention who's the highest and who was the lowest. That way, we don't have to go fantasy points through every single player.
Yeah, I figured that'd be a little aggressive. So, um, you said you did fantasy points as well, right?
I did, yeah.
All right, so I'll let you go to yours and I'll do mine then. That way I'm not just talking over everybody all the time, even though I
Okay,
love to do that.
and we could figure it out if we have different numbers in fantasy. I tried to grab it. I think well maybe the last game week was still going on, so I'm not 100% sure if the last game week is included in here, but I think it is.
Gotcha. Okay.
So for me, I drafted, and I don't know for sure if this was the exact order, but I drafted Andre Blake, Brad Stuver, Dane St. Clair, uh, Aljaz Ivacic. I don't know if I got the first name right, and Joe Willis. And Joe Willis had the most fantasy points for me at 157, and Ivacic had the lowest at 52.
Yeah, and you were closely followed by Stuver there as well with a buck 50. So I guess talk to me about the Ivicic because that's kind of where it went downhill for you, I think.
Well, he missed time, didn't he?
I mean, he had
I
a
have
whole
to,
bunch of issues. He had a um that whole scandal with the club where he was like speaking out against the club.
oh, I don't remember that.
Do you even like pay attention to MLS news, or you just sit here and
I
chat?
live under a rock like half the
You
time.
you do. Um, so Ivicic, just to make sure I have the information correct. So he's been suspended right now for threatening language towards the Timber staff. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh my goodness. All right, so now we go all the way back. So in March, they signed a contract extension with him,
Uh,
agreed through 2025. 1 month ago, he files a complaint with the Players Association for essentially abusive conduct and tampering. And he wouldn't go into much detail about it. And the Timbers didn't go, comment on it either. Um, he's tried to leave Portland. He's not happy with a whole bunch of different things in terms of he doesn't start. Um, I'm reading the source here that every time he doesn't start a game, he makes it known that he won't play for the club. So every time he didn't start a game, Gio didn't select him. He had an issue with the coach, just like he had an issue with everybody and anybody. Like he was a bad locker room guy, essentially.
mm,
So then flash forward or yeah, go back in time just about, 3 or 4 days after that, MLS suspends him for threatening language towards the staff. So he has been an absolute nightmare in terms of being a player who they just signed. And I'm sure that he will be moved on relatively quickly.
I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just jump over to mine then because I mean, like I said, Joe Willis was fantastic. Stuver was great. Blake, a lower year than I think we imagined, but still did well. And St. Clair also up there. I think they're all, where are we here? We have total fantasy points. Joe Willis was the fourth highest scorer. Brad Stuver seventh. St. Clair and Andre Blake close to the top 10. And then, of course, Ivicic a little bit lower. I myself got hurt by one player as well. So I drafted Jordy Petrovic first, which was good until it wasn't. Martin Paez from FC Dallas was also a pretty solid pick. The one that hurt me was my number 3 pick, Eloy Room. And we'll talk about why in a second. Zach McMath was my number 4 pick and my highest score at 146. And the GOAT Carlos Coronel being my 5th, like, oh, I'll just take him to take him, ended up being my 2nd highest score. So that was really cool. Big thing for Eli Room. He went down with a knee injury early in the season, played like 2 or 3 games. And then Patrick Schulte never lost his place, right? He just came in and did his job and did it well enough where they didn't need to replace him. So that meant Eloy Room, my number 3 pick, sat on the bench. And then eventually he got sent to the Eredivisie. So, oh, okay. That's interesting. So yeah, that was my big pick. He only scored 14 points for me. Everybody else was above 120. Paez at 120, Petrovic at 125, Coronel at 135, and McMath at 146. Then we took it into averages. So your average for points for your players was 124, while mine was 108. So out of the goalkeeper spot, you are leading currently by, quick maths is 26 points.
Very nice. Do you want to know ratings for who scored?
Yeah, sure. Give it to me.
So I'll kind of go on the same thing. I'm not going to read through everybody's, but the highest rated was Jordy Petrovic. He was the number 1 rated goalkeeper with a minimum of 15 appearances. Obviously, he didn't finish the season. He left midway. I think that hurt you. I think full season of Petrovic, you might have taken this.
I agree.
The lowest rated, not counting Eloy Room because he didn't qualify, was Carlos Cornell.
That is
rated
extremely biased.
6.24 rating on who scored.
6.24.
Pretty bad.
9.24. Sorry.
So that's your recap on ratings.
Well, I appreciate the recap, even though it's wrong.
So you had the top and the bottom,
and that's why I think it's better to take a steady approach to it. Like, okay, this is, these guys are always, you're guaranteed to do well. No high flyers. But one thing I want to do was talk about players we missed, and a couple of crazy names pop out in the top 3. Players you wouldn't expect. The number 1 highest scoring fantasy goalkeeper this year. Any guesses, by the way? Unless you've looked at it and know it already.
I haven't looked at it. I only looked at who we picked.
Any guesses?
So my guess would have been Berkey, but I feel like you're setting it up that it's not Berkey.
He's close, but he's not the top.
Daniel rotated too much time.
Of course, you went straight to Daniel.
I'm just trying to think of other goalkeepers towards the top.
I'll be honest with you, I don't think you get the top 2. But throw one out there. Go for it.
Tim Melia.
Not Tim Melia, but very close. Oh. Steve Clark with 168 points out of Benny Ball's Houston Dynamo.
That was the most or second most?
That was the most. The second most, Jonathan Sirois from Montreal. 33 games, 162 points.
You get points, it seems like, if your defense is bad. That's kind of
I still wouldn't
other
expect
than Joe Williams.
I still wouldn't expect him to be that high, though. You know what I mean?
Oh, you get more points the more saves you make. So there's definitely some factor in there. Obviously, Joe probably isn't facing as many shots as Stuver or Clark, but he's racking up the clean sheet points. So I guess there's some trade-off, but it seems like it's better if your goalkeeper's just making tons of saves, regardless of if they're getting clean sheets.
Yeah. So, and this is all preparation for next year, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, I'm taking notes.
I know. Yeah, I know how I'm approaching this next year. It's all Red Bull players because we're going to the Cup. So
we just gotta pick as if we're picking for fantasy. We're basically just drafting a fantasy team.
Yeah. The other one, and the thing that we're gonna have to change for next year, Roman Berkey was 3rd on the list, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, you didn't put him in your top 10." And we're like, "Listen, we didn't pick anybody from the incoming teams because we just went off of what it was in the past, and that was a mistake because there were a lot of good players from St. Louis who would have helped us out here."
It's hard. It's hard to rate all the players who've been in the league and you can pull statistics for versus guys who have never been in the league, and you kind of just have to guess at that point.
Yeah, but if I took a flyer on him at 3 instead of Room, I'm winning.
Yeah, I could say the same thing. If I took a flyer on him instead of Ivacic, I'm winning.
Correct.
Still,
But that's my point, right? Is sometimes the risk is worth it. Anyways, Stephen Fry at 5, tied with Roman Solitano. Brad Stuver, Zach McMath, Galese at 9, Patrick Schulte at 10. So if I had foreseen Room's injury and Schulte's emergence as an elite goalkeeper, might have taken him. Drake Callender underneath him. Takaoka from Vancouver also in there. And then Chris Brady in kind of that top part there. Only a couple goalkeepers didn't break 100. That would be our good friend William Yarbrough, who only played 19 games. Luis Barraza only played 24 games. Johnson only 20 games, and Jonathan Bond only 24 games. So, all right, let's move on to right backs. I'll kick this one off. I drafted Brendan By first, Aaron Herrera second, Steven Moreira third, Julian Gressel fourth, great pick, and Nathan Harriel 5. And two of those guys let me down. One being Herrera at 81 points, and the other being Harriel at 94. And I thought Harriel was going to take kind of a jump forward this year and be kind of Philly's guy instead of flip flopping, which of course did not happen. He played 25 games, but just did not produce the way he expected to. A lot of times he's coming off the bench or what have you. In terms of Aaron Herrera, only 19 games played for Montreal, and this was a move that I was big on. He did very well in RSL, and he just didn't really step up to the plate. And the only thing I'm going to check here really quick is to make sure he didn't get hurt this year, because I mean, again, Montreal, nobody really talked about too much because we were all expecting them to finish bottom of the league. Yeah, he didn't miss any time, so he just kind of never fit into that system, whatever system Montreal ended up using. And the last one that I think hurt me in I guess with respect to expectations, and it was due to a season-ending injury in August. That was Brandon By. So Brandon By finished with 100 points, 102 if you want to be specific about it. But he missed 16 games from August to the end of the year with his big injury. So another one that hurt me, especially considering you hit 3 of yours pretty much out of the park. Moreira was fantastic for me in terms of fantasy, as well as Julian Gressel. So, yeah, I'm happy with the way that I drafted that. Disappointed with the way that some of them turned up, and of course, Brandon By, you can't stop Brandon By, or you can't blame Brandon By, I guess I should say.
it's a great thing that you were able to cheat on this one and you still managed to lose. It's fantastic news.
Cheat? What do you mean cheat?
I'll explain that in a minute.
Oh, you're gonna say,
So,
"Oh, Steven Moreira played center back, so he shouldn't count
so
for your right."
I drafted Brooks Lennon, Julian Araujo,
Nice.
Jack Moore, Alex Roldan, and Keegan Rosenberry. Brooks Lennon had an enormous amount of points, 215 fantasy points, versus Julian Araujo having 0 fantasy points.
That balanced out real good for you.
It did. Thank goodness for Brooks Lennon saving me. Julian Araujo moved to Barcelona. So, or sorry, UEFA.
Try again.
So did not Brocalona.
Europa Lona or Brocalona. Yep, both are acceptable. UEFA Lona means that they can get into the Champions League, and we don't do that.
Well, I was talking about like UEFA, the organization,
Gotcha.
because they have them in their back pocket. Anyway,
gotcha.
Shaq Moore and Roldan had pretty solid seasons fantasy points wise. Keegan was a little bit lower, and he didn't miss a ton of time. He missed some games, but I think it's just a product of Colorado's poor season this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get to my point on the cheating part, technically, if I go to who scored and I go to the right back position and I look for people who had played at least 10 times as a right back this season, 4 out of the 5 of your players did not qualify. So you just picked a bunch of people that played in positions other than right back.
All right. So firstly, let's talk about this. Firstly, we had a conversation about Um, Julian Gressel, whether he counted or not. I know you remember that because he would not have fallen to 4 if we both agreed from the start. Oh yeah, he's a right back because he plays advanced, right? Steven Moreira was a right back, then Nancy changed the system. So um, that right there, allow it because you can't control a shift. Also, if you're wondering which player made me change to the fantasy versus ratings, Steven Moreira. And then who was the you're talking about players who didn't qualify. So who else didn't qualify?
Herrera and Harriel.
Why didn't they qualify?
They did not have the map as playing at right back.
Where else did they play?
I will look it up for you.
All right. While you do that, I'm going to say that the averages worked out to be very, very close on this. So my average for these players was 123.6 fantasy points. Your average was 125 flat, which meant that I made up a little bit of ground, but not a super large amount. So the average went 115 to me and you were 124 and a half. So I started closing the space a little bit, but not immensely.
Harriel, if you're wondering, played like in 5 different positions this year. He had
So
8
he's just the
appearances
next
at right
Ryan
back.
Hollings.
Yeah, he had 8 at right back, 7 as a sub, 5 at right mid, 3 at center back, and 2 at left back.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then Herrera, I think Herrera they have technically classified as a right mid.
See, and that's the other reason why this was tough is because a lot of teams who play with the 5 back, those advanced players, you're not sure what they count as, because who scored counts them differently than other people. So
Yeah, they got him at 7 as a right mid, 7 as a defensive right mid, which I think is the wing back, 3 as a sub, and 2 as a center back.
gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, hey, at least all of mine played. So Dub City population may.
I'm just trying to help you out.
And I'm only saying that because I can't brag about it after this next section. Um, we'll move on to the center backs, and I will let you start us off.
Sure. So for me, I went with Jack Elliott.
Defensive Player of the Year, Jack Elliott, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Walker Zimmerman, Rafael Chicos, Teenage Hadebe, and Jesus Murillo. Jack Elliott and Walker Zimmerman both had 142, and Murillo had 73. So that's the highest and lowest.
Thought process behind Murillo and Hadebe.
I mean, I thought a strong season was probably coming in for LAFC. I thought he'd be a consistent guy in the back line for them. But I mean, I gotta search and see. I'm guessing he got hurt. Yeah, Murillo got hurt, missed a lot of the season. I know Hadebe, I'm pretty sure was the same situation. Also got hurt, missed most of the season. So both of those guys, ratings wise, were pretty solid. I imagine a full season under their belt, and it would have been a lot more points, but they missed about half, I would say, give or take.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I took actual defensive player of the year. That's where the joke came from. If you guys go check out the TikTok that we made, Connor started off the draft pick saying that he's taking defensive player of the year, Jack Elliott, and Jacob Glesnes won defensive player of the year last year. So I ended up taking him. And then I took Marco Silva. Is it Marco Silva from RSL? Silva? From RSL? Marcelo, yeah. That's not great. That tells you how good he did for me. Thiago Andrade, Dave Romney, and then the one that killed me the most, Nathan. So let's go into this a little bit. Defensive Player of the Year, Jacob Glesnes, 144, 2 points over Jack Elliott. Cool. My stats told me that Marcelo Silva was going to have a heck of a year because he was fantastic in 2022. He played 16 times and scored 54 points. Not great. He did miss a bunch of games to little injuries here and there. So a total of 10 games missed over the year. But when you're missing, 5 days here, 4 days here, 3 days here, it all adds up. And eventually you can't get yourself back into fitness and form. So then you lose your spot. Andrade was my highest score with 203. You can never go wrong with a guy who's pretty much in the running for Defensive Player of the Year every year. And then Dave Romney was another good one for me. I knew he was going to do well. He's a 34 game a year guy, and thought he did really well for New England this year. He was in our MLS third team, I think. At least he was in mine. And then the one that hurt me, Nathan, picking up an injury right before the season started, picking me up 0 points total. He was due for a great year. I think we both agreed on that. And in this, you went first, then I went first, then you went first. So you actually skipped out on him, which I thought was interesting because you were high on San Jose the whole year. So I was surprised you didn't go with him. However, I think he was going to have a really good year. Averages for this section, 113.8 for me and 115 for you. So that brings my total average to 115, your total average to 121. So I'm closing the gap. And in the next section is where I really, really take a good jump forward. Left back was my area of expertise, unless you have anything you want to add on the center backs.
I was going to say that I think Nathan could have had the season that Rodriguez had for San Jose this year.
Exactly what I was thinking. That it was, and the two of them together is likely going to be really good if he comes back to full health next year. Left back for me, I had the first pick in this one, and I kind of knocked this one out of the park. I don't think I swung and missed on any of them. So Kai Wagner first, my highest scorer, 188. Always a consistent high attacking return left back, really great. The second pick, John Tolkien, what a pick. 169 points. Nice. Great attacking return for the youngster out of RBNY who's going to win their playoff game tonight. Really, really came into his own as an attacking player this year. So great return for him. Dan Lovitz at 153 points, a really good return for a solid Nashville team. Nuhu and Andrew Gutman were 4 and 5, both around the 120, 125 mark. Again, just good returns. Gutman went from a high attacking Atlanta team to a nightmare of a Colorado situation. So I'm assuming he might drop down my list next year, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've figured out the strategy for the fullbacks. If we're basing it off of this, forget defense. Just go get an attacking fullback. That's clearly the strategy. Because your top 3 picks are like good attacking fullbacks. But we both agreed that Kai Wagner was definitely not the best left back this year. But, top rated, probably top rated in fantasy points because he gets forward. I went with Diego Palacios, Claudio Bravo, DeJuan Jones, Andrew Brody, and Raheem Edwards, who I think in fairness, I think all of them played pretty much the whole season. I think all of our picks did, which is kind of impressive.
Yeah.
It is pretty impressive. Palacios was my highest at 160. I think we both talked about him as being one of the best left backs in the league this year. I think you had him in your first team. I had him in my second. So
yep.
My lowest was Raheem Edwards, who got a lot of game time this year, but wasn't as consistent of a starter and was also a part of a pretty rough Galaxy team this year. So he only finished on 104 points.
Yeah, this was a really good section for both of us. I think, and again, the way the fantasy points are laid out, it's only excuse me, it's only defenders, so you can't pick and choose like, oh, who are the best left backs and such like that. But you have your rankings there. I don't know if you have people who we might have missed. But I'll start off with the averages of 151 for me and 129.8 for you. That makes the defensive line, so the goalkeeper, right back, center back, left back, the average is 124.1 to me and 123.45 to you. So with the left backs, I've overtaken you, which puts me in a really good spot.
I don't really think we missed anybody. Honestly, in terms of rankings for guys that played at least 10 appearances at left back, we had the top 6 rated drafted.
Nice.
So we
Players
did a
in the
pretty good job.
players in the fantasy world, and I think one of them is a um one of them was tough because we didn't know quite where to put him. The top scorer by a large margin was Alvaro Barreal, and we didn't have a right back. We didn't have a right back. We didn't have a right mid, and that's because of the way we analyze things, I think. Surprise pick Jackson Reagan, 199 point, fourth highest rated defender out of Seattle. So um, whenever Yamar decides that his time is done, they are in good hands with Jackson Reagan. Rodriguez, as we mentioned, was basically Nathan just flip flopped. Richie Larea, 182 points for both Vancouver and Toronto. Justin Galad with 180 points out of RSL. Jack Mayer, 172 points and 1 total doxing. So he has tons of good stats to work off of. And then kind of to finish up the top like 20 here is Veselinovic out of Vancouver, 168 points. So we did get a good amount of the top group. But yeah, not too bad out of us for sure.
Yeah.
We move on to the center defensive midfielders. And I'll let you go first here because I think we both have one or two that kind of we missed.
Huh. Considering the injury history of my entire team, I would say pretty much they all missed. But I went with Gaston Brugman, Gaston Jimenez, Pablo Ruiz, Grigor, and Keaton Parks.
Gregory, man. His name's
Fine,
Gregory.
He's Brazilian. Is it actually Gregory?
It's how we pronounce it here. I don't care if it is or not.
All right, fine. He'll be Gregory for the DP pod. I feel like Keaton Parks is the only one. I mean, Keaton didn't even have that many points, but he's the only one I feel like was consistently playing this year. Everybody else got. Well, actually, Gaston Jimenez might have been consistently playing. I'd have to double check that, but he was pretty low in points. Gregory got hurt early in the year. Pablo Ruiz was also battling injuries all season, and Gaston Bergman, same thing, was racking up points, doing well, and then got hurt and missed most of the year. So I don't regret my picks. I think I made good picks. Just everybody got injured and couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I went down your list and I was like, oh my goodness. Out, out, out.
Yeah.
That's brutal for you. For me, I went with Leon Flock first, who kind of dropped off this year. Obina Nwodu from FCC, Ili Sanchez out of LAFC, Aiden Morris was a great pick for me, and then Matt Polster, who was all right. Leon Flock was my lowest scorer and the lowest scorer out of all of our picks in the 6 role. So
I think he beats Gregory.
healthy picks. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. I mean, none of my picks are healthy, so
Yeah. Leon Flock scored the same amount of points as Michael Bradley. So just to put that into perspective for you, not a ton of game time. He kind of lost his starting role, so went from having 90 minutes a game, didn't play from the week 24 to week 28, and then got 15 minutes at the end of the last game of the season here. And just to double check to be sure, I don't believe he got hurt. I think he just lost a spot. They didn't need him, but I might be wrong. Okay, so he did. He missed about 8-ish games, mostly from September 1st to October 3rd. So he missed about a month. That being said, he wasn't really doing the job before that anyway. I think his highest scoring week was 8 against Inter Miami when he had a goal, and everything else was threes or fours. So not as much defensive work as I thought was going to come out of him. Nobodu was great. FCC's glue in the midfield. Billy Sanchez lower than I expected, but still did the job. Aiden Morris was fantastic. First team all MLS for us, as well as our top U22 player. And finally, Matt Polster. Matt Polster was kind of like, I don't really know what else to pick, so here's another 6. So
He
136.
He outscored my entire team.
Yeah, I was saying 136 out of that is pretty good. So averages there 134 for me and 100 on the dot for you. Average running is 126 to 118. So I keep pulling away a little bit here. Center attacking mid was good for both of us. I'll be honest with you, kind of hard to miss on this one. And even though we both had one that kind of did, they still were great. Carlos Heel for me at 246, excuse me. Daniel Pazza, excuse me, 205. 20 out of 20 on penalties in his career. I think he's like 8 for 8 this year or something. Zelarayan 157, Ladero 153, and Pereira 120. Zelarayan, even though leaving after 20 games, is still top one of the top guys in there. Nico Ladero did fine. Pereira a bit underperforming for that Orlando team, but where is he? He was 120, 31 games and only 120 points. Not a great return. However, there weren't a ton of available players left at the 5 spot. Even though I will say I did miss a little bit on you after your number 5 pick. So I'll just let you go to it.
Yeah. So I went with Sebastian Driussi, Lucia Costa, Emmanuel Reynoso, Ricky Puig, and Thiago Almada. Thiago Almada was my highest in terms of points.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was. And Ricky Puig, no, sorry, Reynoso was my lowest because he missed the entire first half of the season with that whole debacle. But he was great when he came back. He was racking up points quickly.
I
But
say he missed half a season and still outscored Mauricio Pereira. So
yeah, so he did well when he came back, but missing half the season hurts. Almada and Lucia Costa absolutely dragged me through this center attacking mid spot. They absolutely saved me here because Driussi had a kind of a rough year. Reynoso missed half the year, and Ricky Puig played in a more, I would say, in a deeper role, and also was on an awful team this year. So they bailed me out, and I'm grateful to them for that. In terms of ratings, who scored ratings, we were pretty good here. And I know you say it's like, it definitely is tough to miss in this spot, but we managed to pick guys that even like who played half the season or got injured still were rated high. I think we got all top 6 rated guys outside of Hani, who I don't think really should count here. And the highest rated person that we missed on, surprisingly, was Evander for Portland.
interesting.
I know. We also missed Ryan Gauld in the top 10 there.
That's what I was about to say. Is in terms of attacking return, Mukhtar, who we counted somewhere else, you could I guess technically count Edward Leuven, and then Ryan Gauld was the other big miss that we had. I will say big miss on my part that Thiago Almada, who I don't know, he might have been technically counted as like an outside mid in the 2022 set, which is why he kind of slipped under my radar. But letting him drop to 5 was a big miss on my part, and it kind of put me behind the 8 ball in this last little run here. My averages were 176 versus your 204. Overall, 135 to to 133. So you close the gap there a little bit. And then it's the attacking returns in the left mid, right mid, and striker role that we will go into to see how we do. And we'll start with left mid, and I'll send it to you.
It drops off a cliff here, man. I could speak for myself that my winger picks were awful. And it starts with the left mid spot. So I went with Lorenzo Insigne, Lewis Morgan, Tyus Magno, Jordan Morris, and Chris Mueller. And I had 2 players break 100 fantasy points as attackers.
Ooh.
And one of them was Insigne. Just kind of tells you how rough that was. Lewis Morgan had the least amount of points for me at 11 as he just got hurt and was done for. Jordan Morris had the most for me at 114. He was red hot at the start of the season and then completely went ice cold.
Yeah, you messed this one up pretty good. But it's okay because I followed suit. I started with Alan Velasco, who really was not as good as I thought he would be when I looked at his ratings and his numbers and stuff. Diego Fagundes followed. Daniel Shallowy after that, who was my highest scorer at 158. Then Justin Miram and Derek Etienne Jr. Velasco 111. I thought he would be a lot better than that after his, for a guy who was rated the top 22 under 22 guy, when he showed up and he scored less than Daniel Shallowy, who we didn't hear from for like the entire first half of the year. Little disappointing. Diego Fagundes, obviously, we all bought into the Austin hype, and that came to hurt us. Justin Miram, traded early in the season and then kind of used as a guy off the bench. So that hurt me there. And then Etienne Jr. coming off a career year, barely touched. So wonderful.
Shall we really bailed you out there?
He did, yeah. I ended up averaging just over 100 points, while your average was 75 for attack. And again, this kind of goes back to, we've talked about not being known for our wide players in this league. Kind of shows you what happens there. Now, I think if everybody stayed healthy, you had a better chance of doing it. But averages are now 130 for me to 124.25 for you. So we come down here. We got 2 to go. And we're going to go to the right mids to talk about my great drafting skills at the right mid spot. I knocked this one out of the park. I started on the right mids with Bernadeschi, who is, again, somebody who convinced me to take a Toronto player first. And by convinced, I mean forced. 127. He wasn't my lowest scoring, but he was okay. But my big one, Christian Espinoza at 251, highest scoring wide player of left or right sided by almost 100 points. And then I had Facundo Torres, who hit 187. That was a great return for him. Areola being hurt and away. Excuse me, sir. I'm trying to talk. Areola being hurt and away from the team, and as he was, he only had 68 points. And then Johnny Russell finished with 103. So happy with the way I drafted. I'm a little bit upset with Areola's lack of production due to injury. However, I think I wouldn't be afraid taking him at 4 again next year. I think he had a good return. Just didn't expect him to get hurt. Johnny Russell, again, when we talk about wide players, not a ton of them around. So having him at 5 was not a bad play.
I, on the other hand, decided to play it riskier because, I like to have fun. And I went with Carlos Vela, Jefferson Savarino, Luis Araujo, Santiago Moreno, and Christian Roldan. And Luis Araujo was my lowest scorer with 60 points, and my highest was Carlos Vela with 174.
Talk to me.
It was a miss for me.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I expected Vela to take somewhat of a step back this year, but still be solid, which I think he was. Arujo was a huge miss. I mean, I feel like ever since he got here, I've been high on him and I thought he was going to do great. And his entire time here was just awful. It was a mess. And I know some of it was injuries, but like, what a swing and a miss. I backed him way too much there. Jefferson Savarino, his numbers looked so good coming in that small sample size the season prior. So I bet high on him. And 130 is not a bad return, but certainly is not getting to the levels of like Christian Espinosa, Facundo Torres. And then Roldan, I think, was hurt a lot. So he also did not get a lot of points for me when realistically he probably would have got more if he was healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Roldan was missed most of the year with a concussion.
gotcha. Yeah, I was surprised because I thought he'd have a bigger say in in that. I thought the Luis Arujo pick was a good one, but as you mentioned, definitely did not get up to the level for you.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. In terms of averages, 147.2 in my right mid spot to 117, bringing my total average right now 132 to yours at 123, 124. So I'm up 8 points heading into the strikers. All I need is to have a decent return from the strikers,
Don't joke it.
and I'll let
Don't
you go
joke it.
first. We'll leave the anticipation.
Okay. So this is what my scarf was in reference to because I not to pat myself on the back too much. I knocked this one out of the park. I absolutely crushed the striker position. I went with Hani Mukhtar, Jesus Ferreira, Bernaire, Cucho Hernandez, and Julian Carranza. Hani
Okay.
was the highest fantasy points scorer. Bernaire was my only miss because he left, made that transfer. Otherwise, I crushed it with the other four.
I think you cheated by taking Mukhtar as a striker. You
We
should have
both
put him up.
agreed on it, so you can't
If
say
you so
anything.
here's the funny part, right? If you put Mukhtar at Cam, I probably end up doing something like taking Ryan Gauld. Or no, not Ryan Gauld. It probably pushes down like a Ricky Pooge or something like that from you. So I end up taking him instead of Pereira. And then
It would have knocked Thiago Almada off mine.
yeah, but I wouldn't have taken him probably because I
Yeah,
didn't
but
think about.
I would have lost an extra like 274 points.
Yeah, but I'm thinking you were gonna go Almada anyway, because I think you knew I wasn't taking. Hey, listen, let me make my reality, okay?
Okay.
And then from there, slide that up. You would have taken like Chicho Aranjo first because we were both high on him. And then I would have done something like take, I don't know, literally anybody else. Like anybody else. Denny Buwanga, nah, probably not. Probably not Denny Buwanga. I wouldn't have taken
I
Denny
wouldn't have
Buwanga.
gone Aranjo first. I would have gone Bernaire first.
No, you would.
I have him ranked. I could tell you who I would pick. It would have been Bernaire and then Cucho I had ranked third.
Yeah. So again, this is my reality, not yours.
Yeah. But let's hit the reality of your picks because they're hilarious.
So because Connor cheated, I was forced to
Uh-huh.
go down a route of perennially injured and or transferred within 3 weeks. God, this is so bad. So my first pick was Chico Aranjo at 54 points, who was gone from LAFC before the season started, and then brought back to RSL with like 10 games to go.
They tried to save you. RSL almost saved you.
Chicharito at 24 points, who uh, got injured 10 games into the season. Willie Agata on 42 points, who got injured 10 games
This
into
isn't
this
even the best pick still. We still haven't even gotten to the best pick yet.
fight. Brandon Vasquez at 126. That's my highest scorer. Great pick. The GOAT. And then Sebastian Ferreira, 11 points out of Houston, who didn't make Benny Ball team and was sent out on loan.
Amazing.
This it, there are not many performances that are impressive as what I've just done. To miss on one is expected. To miss on 2, okay. To miss on 3, wow. To miss on 4 out of 5 in an attacking category in a league that is built simply to bring entertainment through attacking return, to miss 4 out of 5 picks is nothing short of substantially mesmerizing. I am flabbergasted at how awful these picks were. Goodness me. I'm speechless. Like I said, I got hit by the injury bug. That sucks. I should have known Araujo was going to get pulled. So that stinks. Ferreira, that's a unlucky, right? And then yeah, because I knew
I don't know
Benny
if that
Ball
was
was
a
gonna
great
I
pick.
knew he was gonna be an outcast in Benny Ball's system. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's not like he was a world beater coming in to the season.
He was. He had like 13 goals for a garbage Houston team, and then he had players around him. He was expected to be good. Anyways, all I needed to do was not poop the bed, and I pooped the bed. So I averaged 51.4 points. Connor averaged 154 points, bringing the final total average 123 to 127. I have lost because I missed 4 out of my 5 strikers in this challenge.
Let's go.
A year-long challenge down the drain because I can't pick one decent striker
From one position. The
from one
entire
position.
lost the whole thing from one position.
It is pure heartbreak.
I mean, in fairness, a few of the top strikers this year were just we like completely didn't consider because they were new. Like no Yakumakis, no Benteke, I believe. And those two were top 5 in terms of ratings this year. So yeah, there was only so much you can do. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of swing and misses. You should have gone Pulido. You love Alan Pulido. I guess Pulido did miss some time, so maybe that wouldn't have been the best choice.
I'm, you know, if I were sitting in a press conference, people ask me this question, I have no answer for you, right? There are times in elite level competitions like ours that you just make mistakes, and that's what happened today. Today, I made a mistake, and I missed my draft.
I will say in your defense, everybody else outside of the like 5 that I picked or anybody that was not picked that I considered ahead of the draft, I think only one of those guys ended up being successful this year. Or at least like I'll say was one of the top strikers, and that was Brian White.
Yeah,
Everybody else that I considered was lower on the list. Like did not have a great year. So it was hard to predict it ahead of time. I think a lot of new strikers kind of hit the scene this year.
Yeah, I look at it now. Bouanga would have been in the left mid category, right?
Yeah, he wouldn't have counted here.
So he wouldn't have counted for this. Kucha was gone. Vela was a winger. Brian White thought about it, didn't expect him to get to the level he was last year, and he actually surpassed
4
him.
goals. He had 4 goals the season prior. Like,
right.
It didn't make sense for you to pick him unless you were doing it for the memes, and it would have worked out so well for you.
just out of curiosity, let's say instead of let's say I take a meme pick at 5, right?
Yeah,
that brings me to 83.6, which would have brought me within 1 point. I still would have lost, but it would have taken me within 1 point. Benteke, I wasn't sold on DC. So wasn't really thinking him. Swiderski, I thought man, how bad would that have been? Instead of Vasquez, I took
Swiderski.
No, not Swiderski, Capetti.
Oh God, yeah, that would have been brutal.
That would have been the worst 5 draft picks of all time. Oh, he had 87 points, so it wouldn't have been too bad. But
that's you have 5 strikers, not one hits 100 fantasy points. That's
bad. No, that's fair. Swiderski at 156. Giacomakis wasn't in the league yet, so when we drafted this, he wasn't an option, I don't think. Yeah. Bobasi, I thought overperformed, and I wasn't going to take him. Polito was hurt. Mikael Ure. I thought Carranza was the guy, so I didn't bother with Ure. And then, yeah, Nico Giacchini, who was on St. Louis, so we weren't looking at him. Or,
Yeah,
the
he
next
popped
person would
off
have been
this year.
Duncan McGuire.
There's no shot you would have picked Duncan McGuire. You didn't even know Duncan McGuire existed at the start of the season. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Can't wait for next year. I'm stoked. I got my notes.
Next
Going
year,
from back to back.
next year, I'm doing 4 picks and a meme pick, and one of those meme picks is gonna save me.
You say that, but we're gonna look back on it, and your meme picks are gonna get transferred out in the first week.
Stop it.
I think it's just you. This
No,
proves it. You curse people.
not me. Not me. Um. Okay, so thanks everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed us going through our terrible picks for the 2023 top 5 positional draft and reacting to how good and or bad they were, depending on who you ask. A heartbreaking defeat in the last second of the game, buzzer beater, if you will. But we come back stronger next year. We use this, we learn from it, and we rebound. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you listen anywhere you get your podcast, so you know next time we go live. We've got some MLS history coming up. We've got playoff previews, some what went wrongs. We still have to go through some of those, and then yeah, I think that's all we have planned for now. We'll get back to planning it once the season's over. Coming back stronger. So make sure you follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, where I am posting every day now. How crazy is that? Twice a day on TikTok. That's mad. We're getting our numbers up, man. We are at 254 on TikTok. Let me double check that really quick. And 224 on YouTube. So make sure you continue to subscribe there so that we can interact with you and get our numbers up. Yeah, 254 on the Tickety Talks. And then YouTube, where are you? There you are. Yeah, YouTube's still 224. So I want to get that up. Let's get that up so we can start making money on this stuff because we're broke and need help. But yeah, other than that, thanks so much for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.